Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of ClueCon Weekly. I am your host, Jon Gray, and today we're going to discuss hybrid mobile apps and what it takes to kind of build them securely. Joining me is seasoned security researcher and staff engineer at Black Duck, Venita Sangaraju. Venita, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, for those meeting you for the first time, can you give us a background on yourself and the problems that you're working on and solving over at Black Duck?
Yes, of course. I've been with Black Duck for around 10 years and I've evolved over the time. Like I was a consultant working for the industry, like doing like security things like pen tests and source code reviews. But
Mm-hmm.
now I'm more like a little settled down. I'm working in the R&D part of Black Duck where um, we try to come up with innovations that'll help our existing products or come up with new products. Currently, I think in 2025, our focus is all about using AI and trying to see how it'll fit into our business model. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of fun things. We're always coming up with great little prototypes and hoping that customers will take a bite.
Yeah, definitely. AI is huge, obviously. And being able to kind of bake it in efficiently instead of just bolting it on and stacking layers is definitely a challenge in how we are able to kind of advance to this next level of the tech world that we're in. I know you're working a lot on hybrid mobile apps. Can you kind of set the stage for us and explain what a hybrid mobile app is, how they differ from native apps or just plain web apps, and what your kind of approach to them are?
Yes, sure. So imagine you're a developer and you have a request that you need to create an app for iOS. So you go ahead and you create this beautiful app from scratch. And then
Mm-hmm.
as you deploy it, someone comes in and says, hey, can you support our Android users too? So you see, in this case, now you have to go back, start using the Android SDK and start building it from scratch again. It's not an ideal use of resources, right? So you probably want
No,
to
not
reach
at all.
all kind of customers soon. Yeah. So then comes in the hybrid app framework, which means you write once and you can build it for any platform that you need. So it was definitely very easy for developers to start scaling it and uh, try to reach more users really quick.
So, what kind of tools are people using in order to make that happen? We've heard of React Native or Flutter. What are kind of
Mhm.
your preferences, or why are some people choosing different ecosystems over others?
Good question. So I think it really just boils down to, I want to say it boils down to the developers need to learn.
Yeah.
React Native has been around for so long. It's very mature. I think it's handled by Meta and it's very close to JavaScript, which means, you can move on to this language really quick. And then came Flutter, which was handled by Google, which is supposed to be more scalable. It's fancier. It has a better community. Um, and I think if I remember correctly, there's like close to 50% of developers out there are using Flutter. So there's so many
Nice.
frameworks. These are just the two latest ones. It just depends
Yeah.
on each team.
Uh-huh. So, how are developers kind of choosing libraries, and how are external libraries kind of like a double-edged sword? The way I view them is like, yeah, it'll help you complete the wheel, but it obviously opens up a can of worms for security updates or platform updates, security holes. How do you kind of rely on libraries, and how do you kind of choose them efficiently when it is that you're building out applications?
Yes, yes. So if I were to put on my developer hat, I would look at a
Uh-huh.
library and think about, will this do the job for me, right? That's usually
Yeah.
the first question. Or is it easy to consume? So when you pick a library, you're probably thinking about whether it'll help me achieve this task, but you're probably not thinking about, is it doing it safely? Is it suitable for all of these operating systems that I'm trying to support? And
Uh-huh.
there's so much talk about like supply chain issues. Like open source is a real problem now. So with hybrid frameworks, all of these frameworks come with like a base set of standard libraries, which are more proprietary and closed. But then
Uh-huh.
a majority of the functionalities are possible because of external open source libraries, which are open source, right? You don't really know how to trust them. You don't know what to
Yeah.
look for. So, so more than a web app, for mobile apps, for hybrid mobile apps, I think external libraries bring in more risk.
And I always love there's a meme of like a picture of a tiny block, and then it's like all modern infrastructure, and the block gets bigger and bigger, and it's all just being held up by like this really tiny Lego, and it's like some random guy in Oklahoma, and that totally fits our mantra here, like ClueCon Free Switch. We have one of our lead authors lives in Oklahoma, literally. So we always make that joke that we're like, that's really how it is sometimes with open source. It's just someone thanklessly keeping this up to date and keeping all modern infrastructure kind of held up, where it is that it is now. So you mentioned that you wanted to solve the problem, and you also want to think about like the security, or what consequences are out there. Are there any like myths or assumptions that you think that developers make when they are choosing libraries, or even just architecture in general?
Yes, yes, I like that question. I think people think about mobile apps as this, oh, the OS has sandboxed it. Oh, everything is really like in a secure environment. Or I don't know if you heard about Apple's like process of selling an app on their app store. They have to go
Mm-hmm.
through a thorough review. But the myth there is that that's a pure security review, and that's not true. They are trying to do checks, things like, will this bring my OS down? Will it hurt the other apps? Is it going to take up too many resources in this device? They don't really do a very thorough like security review. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
very big myth when people are trying to build mobile apps. Another one I like to mention is how people think that when you use an external library, they think that the library owners are on top of things. They try to assume that, it's popular, it's everybody's using it, I can trust it. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not true, because if that were true, there wouldn't be any concept of CVEs, right? CVEs
Yeah,
just pop up in these libraries. Yeah.
exactly. So why is security overlooked so much, do you think? Is it because it doesn't generally create a lot of revenue off the bat? It's more of like revenue saving in case something really bad happens. Do you feel as though there just needs to be expedited delivery so they don't have enough time to kind of look, or maybe the security problems just aren't even there at surface level at first? So why is it that this trend of security being overlooked is kind of always popping up?
All of those are valid reasons. Yep, I
Uh huh.
completely agree. Like apps like professionals can come in and throw a bunch of stuff at developers, but from their perspective, from like even like your team's perspective, right? A customer is paying you to build a new feature and they can't wait. And then on the other hand, you have these internal colleagues who are coming and saying, hey, can you try to squeeze in like a secure way of doing it? Which one's going to weigh out, right? Like they're going to
Hmm.
focus on what will bring in revenue, like you said.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
also, I think I like to use this example, like people like to ask for forgiveness rather than ask for permission, right?
Permission? Yeah,
So,
exactly. Oh, I
yeah, so
know it.
like security is
Yeah.
like a very, oh, I overlooked that. Sorry, now we have a data breach on our hands, right? It's very
Yep.
reactive. I think it's just an age-old problem of like developer fatigue, like
Hmm.
lives aren't easy, resourcing,
Yeah.
prioritization.
Definitely. Well, if this is kind of like an age-old problem, the kind of most revolutionary thing to happen in our age is definitely AI. Do you feel
Mhm.
as though there is a possible solution, and are you like kind of optimistic for AI being embedded in not only security, but also mobile and hybrid app development? Like, do you feel as though these issues are being sprung up faster than the tools are able to kind of catch them? Or are AI tools kind of being able to catch these security vulnerabilities before they're coming to the surface? So is AI a headache or the ibuprofen to take it away?
I'm on team headache.
One team headache.
Yes, I'm on team headache, but you know
Uh-huh.
what? I don't want to be negative Nancy, because it definitely has its place. Now,
Yeah.
if I'm building something, right, and I'm trying to code something and I want an instant answer on, say, a library that I want to use or a functionality that I want the model to build, I can find answers really quickly before I actually write that code, as opposed to
Mhm.
before I had to go Google search, I had to go through like tens of websites and try to come up with my own answer. There is a kind of beauty in that, but if you're like tight on time and resources and you just don't want to learn that specific piece of functionality, like, LLMs are going to make your life easy.
Oh
So,
yeah.
but I'm still on the side of headache because if you're not using it right and you're generating code with a model, you're going to end up with like 300 lines of code. And now, instead of a coder, you've become a code reviewer of
Hmm.
a, a model trying to be an intern, right? Trying to write
Oh
code,
yeah, a
right?
babysitter.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, you're like
That.
babysitting. And, so something that I could have done in 10 lines, the model is probably going to throw 300 lines at you. And now you've lost
Mhm.
focus on what you started to do.
Oh yeah, and code review is a nightmare, or even trying to replicate
Oh,
something else, and you find that there's 5 applications actually embedded in the application that you wanted, and there's just a lot of incorrect and instability, I guess is the best way to put it. So,
yeah.
how do you find the right balance of using AI tools as convenient in order to expedite things, but not making it so much of a security risk? Like, do you find that in development and also kind of like maybe in productizing things? How do you balance risk and reward in there?
Yeah. I guess take anything a model says with a pinch of salt, you know. There's a word, there's a
Definitely, I know.
phrase,
Yeah.
there's a phrase floating around called garbage in, garbage out. I hear that
Oh
in
yeah.
conferences all the time. So if you think about it, these models have been trained with tons of data, but the data could be good and bad. Like it could be like bad examples, like from Stack Overflow, right? So before you hit that accept button from the, of the code that it generates, it's good to take a look. It could be just like a prompt game. It could be um, having to focus on what is really needed for a
Hmm.
model versus what can I do myself, right? Do you really need to ask a model to do that? So I guess you need to think about these things before you actually fall into the trap of using AI.
Oh yeah, and I think that you nailed it pretty perfectly. We build a lot of AI voice agents at SignalWire, and being able to prompt them to do the task that you want it to actually do not only helps build trust, with the user experience, because at the end of the day, that's who you're really dealing with, but also just helps in order to make our lives a lot easier. There's a little bit of a study that is out there about how much AI or like phone trees kind of ruin people's quality of life, which is a little bit dramatic in a sense to think about. But the user experience is ultimately really important. So in kind of taking the user experience into account, how is it that security teams are able to kind of build these measures while also keeping in mind what the outcomes could possibly be? So for like a specific instance, there's this dating app called T, and they had a leak of like 72,000 images. And this was an app for it was like a dating site. But anywho, long story short, one little oversight ended up being a huge leak of people's like privacy, obviously, and the like. So how do teams stay aware of these consequences, and how do we shift the mindset from like let's get it working to let's get it safely?
Yeah, good question. Um, so if you're building out a mobile app, native or hybrid, I think the first thing you need to think about is the principle of least privilege. Like in this case that you just mentioned, maybe you could have limited the exposure to the data on your device. I mean, it's a dating app, you need access to photos, but you could have gone the extra mile and protected your users uh,
Hmm.
in how much access the app should have in your photos library. Maybe renew that access control over time, permission management. I think mobile apps are notorious for data storage issues, whether it's photos
Hmm.
or whether it's secrets that are left on the device. Even after you like maybe sell the device, there could be things like lingering in the phone.
Yeah.
So to get out of that mentality, I think you need to stop and think about what is the consequence of this code that I'm writing. Is it okay to leave the secret on there? Definitely not. I'm sure there are other ways to do it. So maybe come up with a trade-off of like, it's going to take me 2 minutes to move the secret from a code to like a .env file, right?
Hmm.
And the consequence, now you've completely eliminated the consequence of data breach. So just having that kind of mentality, not just to like be like a star of your team, but to actually put your
Yeah,
users' needs ahead, you know?
definitely. Yeah, and that topic comes up a lot, especially with healthcare use cases for us. With HIPAA regulations or any type of like payment kind of compliance data. We have to be very conscious to not give that or feed that to the LLMs, just because people will get really upset if you leak their HIPAA stuff. As
Mhm.
they should, or their payment
Yeah.
information. You find out that you're asking someone for code, and then ChatGPT gives you someone else's credit card number. It would be a
I
really
know.
really bad sad day for that. But kind of on misuses or unintended consequences. Do you have like an example of where someone was well intentionally using a library or trying to implement some form of security measures, but ended up totally making a security hole and kind of blowing things up?
Yeah.
What is like a security disaster in your eyes?
Um, Sometimes people can do the right thing, but unless you know the overall picture of where this library or API is fitting in, it's very hard to cover all cases. So I think you need to adopt more like a threat model perspective. Like for example, say that you're building an app and most hybrid apps have like a WebView, which is like a tiny little browser in your app to load any URL. It can even
Mm-hmm.
load stuff from other apps. So I know from my consulting days, I remember doing a pen test on a mobile app where they had registered this JavaScript interface to listen to everything. So it's a classic case of not tying down the privileges. See,
Mm-hmm.
in the web world, maybe the consequence could have been limited to something in your browser, but if you have not handled your permissions, now assume this app was some kind of app where you've given it access to Bluetooth and camera and mic and everything. And now you have this easy entry point because of this overly accepting interface. Not only
Mm-hmm.
are you leaking your web layer, you're also going deep inside where you can leak everything in that app's sandbox. So this is a classic case of how you probably wanted to have good functionality, but because you didn't tie it down, you have opened up an entire like loophole into your
Oh
app's
yeah.
little ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a lot of communication over the web, especially the browser, is really something that you got to take seriously. We do a lot of
Hmm.
WebRTC conferencing, kind of like the protocol that we're using right here for this video conference. So being able to
Yeah.
kind of cache in or tap into that interface, you have to deal with device permissions and kind of the likes. Is there
Hmm.
anything that really stands out as usually like the key in all of this in terms of like what opens up vulnerabilities? Like, is it usually mic and camera permissions or and like device specific APIs? Or do you find that sometimes like biometric stuff leaks? I know you mentioned that
Hmm.
local storage is usually a cash crop for scammers or hackers in there. What are kind of some red flags or things to take even extra consideration for when building out some of these applications?
Yeah, so when you're building these hybrid apps, you're probably going to use a lot of libraries. And when you use these libraries, it's important to see what does that library need to do its job. It could be asking your users permissions that you're not even aware of,
Mm-hmm.
just for the library to function. So um, it's always good to like do least privilege, do some kind of homework in these apps. Is that library or the app gonna ask the user permission to external storage, for example? I don't
Yeah.
know if we're in the world of external storage anymore, but a few years ago we had external storage in like Android phones, right? So there's no
Yeah.
reason for an app to go beyond the local internal storage of its own little sandbox. So if the
Uh-huh.
library has these suspicious APIs and permissions, they may have declared it in the README. So again, it's just like homework. Do your homework to make sure it's not going above your app's scope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of those APIs get a little greedy. So I'm with you, wanting
Yeah.
permission and control over things they have no business doing. Um, well, for people kind of getting into the realm of where you're working, you obviously are working on a lot of really cool topics between security, AI, and kind of application development across both web and app. Where do you recommend people kind of get started, and how can people start adapting some of these principles that you've been talking about today?
Well, I think we're in the age where we have these super brainy AIs to help us. So I
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm not naive. I know everybody's going to be doing vibe coding, using coding assistants. And yes, don't trust them, but use them as a learning resource. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
starting off as a developer, I know you probably want to focus on writing good code. You want to write something that's scalable, that's awesome. But no matter how awesome your app is, it could just take one little tiny data breach for it to be scrapped or get into a lot of trouble. So
Yeah.
as you're building, it's important to like stop and think and see how you can do it not only better, but safer. So, before it would be like, yeah, go to training or something, but no one really has the time or bandwidth to go and do 40-hour training, right? So maybe you
Yeah.
can like just do due diligence. If you're picking libraries, just look at how popular is it, but also are they actively maintaining it? Are there any insecure defaults? Like, like we spoke about how all permissions could be enabled. So something you want
Yeah.
to look out for is just due diligence. Look at that library so that you can make a more informed decision.
Definitely. No, I like that a lot. Using it only AI tools as a crutch, but also understanding that that's kind of the new world that we're kind of adopting into. I vibe my way through far too much now these days, and oh no, I'm trying to
Me
have to
too.
reel it back a little bit.
Hmm.
I asked them to fix an error in my database the other day, and it just removed like the entire application. I was like, hey, you did remove the error, you removed the error, and now it's a learning lesson. Oh man. Well, Venita, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything I've yet to ask you or anything else you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
No, I just like would like to end by saying like everybody's doing a great job. Just slow down and take it easy and we can help each other as a community.
Definitely. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining today. I appreciate the talk.
Thank you.